Give it some time, and y'all might even be able to beat Cocomelon's numbers. Please beat Cocomelon for God's sake. We open this week with Minamo flashing back to an explanation about the little McGuffins of their series. Oh my god, y'all are tearing off parts of Uta. Actually, I'm not even all that far off, as it was a piece of the victim of the week's heart, in this case, Nachi's. Minamo kind of rightfully questioned the morality of taking something like that. However, Navier assured her that it was basically like a flesh wound. No, not like that. In that once removed, you can't just put it back in the person, but give it time and the person will just heal themselves, so it was no big deal for the princess to take it and use it to help them in their cause. From the creators of Symphogear, you say? I mean, it at least has to make the morning commute with her kind of awkward. However, with her story over, Minamo would end up choosing to learn more about her princess senpai in Kagari. And by that, I mean some good old stalking! Yeah, again, I'm starting to notice some strong connections between this and the other Sunday morning magical girl anime. Literally, the Yuri jokes are writing themselves. Her stalking also caught the attention of this glasses girl, who I get the feeling is going to be a lot more significant later in the series, only because her design isn't nearly generic enough. After school, Kagari confronted her, as, not too surprisingly, she noticed the giant orange bull following her everywhere. That said, she didn't turn her over to the cops. Instead, the two just had a nice conversation where Minamo mostly praised Kagari's skills, whilst also providing a little background about her and her parents. Piece of advice, Kagari. If they ever invite you to go on a little trip to the Middle East for some charity, turn them down, and if at all possible, discourage them from going too. But yeah, admirably enough, she apparently never tried to emulate her parents, it just kind of happened. I mean, honestly, I do think that she was still influenced by them, but the final call was likely hers, and in the end, she certainly found her own path that her parents wouldn't have been able to go down, unless the spear was around during her mother's generation, and they used something besides smartphones to get to it. But yeah, a very wholesome exchange, especially once Minamo realized that while she was her senior as far as being a princess, Kagari became one pretty much the same way as her by pure chance, really. I mean, I do hope that we get to see this event in a flashback later or something, because I feel like there has to be a little more to Kagari than just this. I also hope that we learn more about the background of the baddies of the show. Hey, at least y'all are bringing them up in the first 3 episodes of the show. If this were a show about some hero girls per se, we might have to wait until like the end of the series to learn anything about them. Nah, but seriously, I do really appreciate that these characters are asking questions both in regards to their antagonists and the world they're protecting. I mean, let's be honest, it is a little suspicious that this place only invites girls up to high school to their world. Like, if I didn't know any better, I would swear there's some sort of farming system for a certain space buddy. Also, thankfully, they did build up the villains of the show a little more, by, much like the precure of the season, having them do a proper change-out, going with Beth to this guy, Gita, and it didn't take long before he launched an attack. Usually it's not that big a deal as long as you're not in the flood area. Nah, of course, it was a direct line to Navio, who proved to be a rather competent ferry partner, as he had already cleared out all of the civilians in the area so that there wouldn't be a victim of the week. But, as we soon see, that wouldn't really be an issue for the baddies of the show. Though before we got there, we got Kagari's transformation sequence. Yeah, I think even actual flamenco dancers would say you're kind of overdoing it there, girl. This sequence was done by Takashi Watanabe, who surprisingly is a pretty significant veteran in this industry. Like, while he tends to be a bit more of a series director, having headed the entirety of the Shakugan no Shana series, he does have experience in magical girl transformations, having done this sequence from Koritsu-san, which was more of a parody of magical girls, but still really well done. But then his other entries on Sakuga Boru include, of all things stuff from Nausicaa. Yeah, he did amazing sequences like this from one of the most iconic Ghibli films ever. Thus, there's no question they knew what he was doing for the sequence, and it was really well done, with there not being a single moment of empty space, as something was always forming on Kagari, and she really managed to show off her dancing skills. That said, yeah, I do personally prefer Minamo's transformation. I don't know, I just kind of prefer the more innocent and magical vibes she brought with her at times goofy little sequence. Still, either way, both girls had amazing transformations, so top marks regardless. Also, on the subject of Minamo, they did rightfully omit her transformation sequence this week, as we did see it last week, and unlike a certain other franchise, I do prefer it when they don't waste time with back-to-back sequences. Anyway, after dealing with the first wave of enemies, Gita introduced himself to the girls. You just say that because you don't want them to tell to Yui on ya. However, it turned out he had the ability to summon more than foot soldiers, which they called pawns, as he then brought out a knight. Yeah, they're going with a chess motif for these villains, and I guess pawns do have the ability to promote themselves. However, knights, while often not as strong as queens, do have their own advantages too. Don't stand diagonally to it, stupid! But yeah, as a result, the still inexperienced Minamo was unable to keep up with its speed. Thus, Kagari said that she'd take care of it, but in a nice bit of visual storytelling, her hands clearly tensed up, suggesting that she had her doubts about dealing with this new enemy type. Meanwhile, Minamo got a moment of reflection, where of course she felt like she was a little weak compared to Kagari. Thankfully though, rather than just completely sulking, she decided to take action by using her gift from her bestie. And using Nachi's shard, she got a basic power-up.
Well, there it is.
I mean, it was still an awesome moment with Minamo doing a classic sword grab spot, and I also think it was meant to be more of a physical power-up to reflect Nachi's spunky personality. Basic, yes, but it still does make sense in the context of the character, and I hope other shards in the series do have their own different effects to reflect their rescue victim. And in any case, it did lead to a nice moment where Minamo declared that she wanted to protect everyone, including Kagari, so she didn't have to feel like she had to shoulder everything herself. That said, I guess she still wanted to claim the kill, so Kagari launched into her finisher. Kagari, I'm pretty sure you're doing a little more damage than the bad guys. But yeah, this was another Koji Ito sequence, who I guess they're just tasking with making the most epic finishers possible. Thus, I would say this is a case of apples and oranges as to which of these two finishers you liked more so far. Personally, I do lean a little more to Kagari because Burning Roses are just plain epic, and that feeling of pure force behind her attack is just aces. But like the transformations, all of these sequences are top class, so it doesn't really matter as they're all just amazing. With that, they defeated the evil Horsey, and the episode ended with the princesses doing the classic magical girl trope of agreeing to refer to each other by first name, though in this case it was a little more justified as they were supposed to be now equals, which they absolutely were. This is another solid world-building episode, with hopefully a little seed planning for later. Obviously, there's still a lot of mysteries in regards to the conflict between the Alice Spear and the Jamorks, but just the fact that they're addressing them now is at least a good sign that we'll get answers sooner rather than later. And until then, this episode also had some good character building for both Kagari and Minamo, as well as of course some more amazing animation and music. I will say, it is a little refreshing to have the veteran of the two magical girl teams so far to be rather humble. I mean, sure, I can appreciate some good, aggressive senpai, especially when they lead to some good character development later, but that's not the purpose of Kagari here. She was meant to show how, regardless of seniority, she was pretty much on equal ground with Minamo. They both had plenty of potential, and trying to compare or emulate each other is just kind of pointless, like how Kagari found her own path regardless of her parents' accomplishments. It's what made their first naming at the end of the episode all the more significant. Along with that, we at least got little hints at future developments, and of course, just some amazing animation and music this week, mostly from Kagari. I mean, the stock animations more than made up for the kind of subpar normal fights, which honestly is fine, as we shouldn't expect every episode to be just a Sakuga fest, and at least they're allocating their animation budget to the most important elements. And overall, this is just a solid episode for kind of building up the world and significantly deepening the bonds between Minamo and Kagari. Maybe they should consider swapping shards if they want to feel a little bit more of each other. Thank you for watching again. Yeah, sorry, I did want to get a new toy from the series, but they were only just saying the stand-ups when I got there last week. Still, it was a really fun trip, and from what I saw, there's at least a lot of anticipation for the merch of the show, so maybe I'll order it online later or something. In any case, look forward to Kamara Gav tomorrow, which, yeah, I've actually at least get this during my Japan trip. And until then, though, for now, my friends, and, hey, what happened? Oh, come on, I only just mentioned CCM a little.